Okay guys, the next section we're going to do is the 8.3 notes on area parallelogram. And again, this is something you probably looked at before, but I'm just going to go through it and remind you of some pieces, right? So please take notes along on, hopefully you've already printed out the notes, the blank copy of the notes, so print those out if you haven't already, and then just take notes along with me. Okay, so the first thing is, right, that a parallelogram, right, here's what our parallelogram looks like. It basically looks like a rectangle that's been pushed over the side, so it has two pairs of parallel sides, right? There's one, there's the second over here. Okay, and we have two pairs of parallel sides for ourselves. And a rectangle is a parallelogram, but we just don't really call it that because the rectangle is a better name for it. So we have our parallelogram here. Okay, one of the main difference for this is that our two sides are not perpendicular to each other, right? So if we were just going to take, let's take this side times this side, that's not going to find us the area anymore because they're not perpendicular to each other. And that was one of the key things when we did rectangles, is that the base and height were perpendicular. Okay, so start with a definition, right? So excuse me. Parallelogram is a quadrilateral with two pairs of parallel sides. All right, that's the definition for it. So copy that down for yourself. Okay. And it's important when we're finding the area for it. Like if this, so this is my parallelogram I'm going to have right here. Okay, and you don't need to make your parallelogram, just watch and we'll take down what we need to take down. Okay, so here's my parallelogram, and here's my height. Notice for this, my height is not, again, what I was saying before, it's not the side length there, right? The height is perpendicular. Okay, so the first thing to remember for yourself is that you're always looking for a right angle when you're doing area. And that right angle is going to determine which one's the height. I always pick out the height first, and then that tells me which one's going to be the base. Now, if I wanted to, instead, I know there's stuff drawn on the other side, but I was just using a scrap piece of paper, but I could have the height, right, coming from the opposite side. I could have the height here, that's fine, and then if I did the height here, then this would be the base, or this would be the base. Okay, so it doesn't have to be the longer side, the shorter side, or the bottom side. Okay, so that's one of the things that people get mixed up on this one, is they think the base has to be the bottom. Right, that's not true. So let's just write down a couple things of what I just said there. Okay. Sorry, waiting for this to focus. This, and maybe it'll focus better. Right. Okay. Okay. So we want to find the height first. Right. That's an important thing. Right. We want to figure out where the height is, and it's important to note that it is perpendicular to one side, which will be the base. Okay, so take a second to write that down. Find the height first. It's perpendicular to one side, which will be the base. Okay. And the other thing, and this is, I highlighted, the first try of this video didn't work, so instead of just redoing it, I'm kind of using parts of it. So the base is the side perpendicular to the height, so that's important to keep in mind. And I highlighted that because we want to keep that. We want to always, as we do these problems, right, focus on this. The base is the side perpendicular to the height. It's not the bottom. Okay. So it's not always the bottom. Okay. And feel free to use the pause button if I'm going too fast. Right, to get yourself caught up. Okay, so let's talk about how to find the area. So I'm going to take my left-handed scissors here, and I'll cut right along. I'm just going to cut this in. Again, you don't have to, just watch. I'm going to cut right along the height here for myself. So notice I've taken my parallelogram and cut it into two pieces. And if I take this parallelogram now and move it over here, you will see that together, right, if I were to line it up, and my cutting wasn't perfect because I was using left-handed scissors, not lefty. Okay, if you look at that, hey, look, it makes a rectangle. Okay, so this shape, which is a parallelogram, has the same area as this shape, which is a rectangle. Okay, and we know how to find the area of a rectangle. It's base times height. So that's how we find the area of a parallelogram. Base times height. Okay? So it's really the same formula. We just have to be careful that we actually use the height. Right? A rectangle is an area of base times height. A parallelogram has an area of base times height. It just happens our height's going to be in the middle. Okay, so let's take a look and try to do some examples now that we know that formula. Area is base times height. And of course you can just write it as B times H, right, to shorten it up. Okay, so find the area of this parallelogram. Okay, so I'm going to start by circling my right angle here because that's going to help me to tell the base and the height. Okay, I can see my height here is 6, so I'll label that. Okay, what's the base of my parallelogram? It's 12. That's my base. Now some people say, well, what about this piece that's outside there? That piece that's outside is just a random piece that's outside to help us know that that's the height. It doesn't matter that there's this little piece right here, this little jaw going out the side here, okay? Your height can be drawn anywhere, right? Your height could be here on the outside of it. It could be on the inside, right? It doesn't really matter, right? You just need to look for that right angle. And the right angle tells me that this is my height and that's my base, okay? And I'm going to take my highlighter and highlight those two. Look. Base and height. If we look at them, they're perpendicular to each other, like we talked about. So base is 12, height is 6, so it's 72. Okay. Some people say, well, what do I do with the 8? Nothing. I do nothing with the 8. I do not need the 8. The 8 is not it's not perpendicular to anything, so it's just extra there. If I want to find the perimeter, then I could use that. Right? Okay. Okay, so let's take a look at B here. Okay, so I start by circling that right angle for myself. Okay, and so this is my height then, coming right off of it. Okay, here's my height, and so what's perpendicular to that? Oh, this one's perpendicular to that, so I'm going to highlight that as well. And you can use a different color. You don't have to use a highlighter. I'm just trying to point out to it. So if I'm looking at 10 as the height, what's the base that goes with that? Okay, here. Oh, this is going to be 8. Now, one of the other things you may or may not remember from years past is that the opposite sides are congruent. So it's important to remember opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent. It's not part of the definition, but it is a property that we're going to use a ton in this unit, right, to help us out. Okay, so since we have, if we're looking at that's our height of 10, well, our base must be 8, and so our area is going to be 8 times 10. Okay, it's going to be 80. No units on it because there weren't any units at the beginning. Okay, all right, so again, our base and height. If we look at C here, right, circle my right angle. This is my base. Here's my height. No, I said it backwards. This is my height. There's my base. I said it backwards. Okay. Now, if you look at this, how long is the base? Well, 11 is this piece. And some people say, how do you know it's just that piece? Well, because you can see from here to here, right? It's kind of separated in there. So I probably would mark this better on a quiz or test. Just say, hey, 11 is this part. But I think there's some homework examples that do the same thing, where like if there's a dotted line there, it's telling you that this is just this portion. The other thing that gives it away is this whole thing is 17, so we know this whole thing has to be 17 as well, because of what we just talked about, that the opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent. Okay, so that's 17. The thing here, the weird part is we don't have the height yet. Okay, and I say yet because we can figure it out. Well, that's 17. It has to be 17 because this opposite side is 17. And if this is 11, because this 11 was centered on that. Okay, what's left over for this right here? Well, if that's 17 and that's 11, well, then that must be 6. 17 minus 11 gives us the 6. Okay? Now we can find the height. How can we find the height? Well, tons of different ways we could find that height, right? Well, not tons, but a couple of different ways. We could do Pythagorean theorem, right? Or we could maybe remember the triple, 6, 8, 10, right? We've done that so many times. Okay. And that's kind of up to you. So I'm gonna assume that you remember the triple, 6, 8, 10, but you can use, right? We're gonna use Pythagorean theorem or triples, okay, to get the height. That's how I'm finding it there. Okay. So it's possible it's a radical, right? That could happen sometimes, but most of the time it's going to be a Pythagorean triple there, so it'll come out nicely. Okay. So let's look at our base and our height. Our base is 17. Again, because look at, I highlighted the entire thing, and that entire thing is 17. The height is 8. Okay. I just do 17 times 8 in my calculator. Yeah, or maybe I know it. Okay, so I get 136 there, and that's my area. Again, no units, so I don't have to worry about units at the end. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video here and put a second video for the next example, just so it fits on YouTube. Right. Right. If anything that I said here didn't make sense, you should re-watch and try to make sure you understand, or maybe go try some of the homework now, and then because example 2 is going to be some of the later ones. So the first 2 pages of the work is going to be on these guys, right? And then the last one is going to be on these types. So try some of those prompts before you look at example 2.